The day my fiancé delivered me to the monster, the church bells were already ringing. I was sitting in the back of the bridal car with white silk gathered around my knees, a veil pinned so tightly into my hair that every nervous breath tugged at my scalp, and a bouquet of white roses trembling in my hands, as if even the flowers knew I was being carried toward the wrong kind of forever. My mother had kissed my forehead before I stepped into the car and whispered, "Elena, you look like someone finally chose you." I believed her. That was the cruelest part. I believed the dress meant I was loved. I believed the ring waiting in Adrian Cross's pocket meant I had been chosen. I believed the man following 2 cars behind me was afraid of losing me because he loved me, not because his entire performance depended on everyone seeing him try to save me. My phone was pressed to my ear, and Adrian's voice came through soft and warm, the same voice that had found every lonely place inside me and learned how to touch it without leaving fingerprints. "Stay on the old stone road," he said. "Don't let the driver take the main street. There's traffic near the cathedral. I'm right behind you, sweetheart." I looked through the rear window and saw his silver car 2 vehicles back, shining under the morning sun. Adrian lifted one hand from the steering wheel when he noticed me looking. Even from that distance, he knew exactly when to smile. I smiled back through tears because I thought that was what love looked like. A man following you to the altar, a man making sure you arrived safely, a man promising you would never be unwanted again. "Are you nervous?" he asked. "A little," I admitted, holding my bouquet closer to my chest. "Don't be," he said. "After today, no one will ever make you feel invisible again." My throat tightened because he knew. He always knew. Before Adrian, I had spent most of my life in the back rooms of St. Michael's Cathedral repairing other women's wedding dresses. I fixed torn veils, yellowed lace, missing pearls, broken sleeves, old gowns daughters wanted to wear because their mothers had worn them 30 years before. I knew how to make broken bridal things look whole again. I knew how to hide a tear under a line of pearls. I knew how to press old silk until it looked almost new. But I did not know how to repair the quiet ache of being the woman who helped everyone else become chosen, while no one ever looked at her that way. Adrian had looked. At least I thought he had. He walked into my life during a charity fitting at St. Michael's, wearing an expensive navy suit and a smile too gentle for a man from his world. A young bride had burst into tears because the donated veil she was supposed to wear had split down the middle, and everyone around her was panicking. I remember sitting beside her, taking the torn lace in my hands and whispering, "A torn veil does not mean a broken marriage. Sometimes what is repaired becomes stronger than what was perfect." The bride stopped crying. Adrian, standing near the chapel door, stopped breathing. I did not know then that he was not moved by my kindness. He was studying it. He saw the way I believed in vows. He saw how easily I gave comfort. He saw that I could be made to trust a man who knew how to sound wounded enough. Later, he told me that was the moment he fell in love with me. Later still, I learned that was the moment he decided I could be delivered. "Elena?" he said now through the phone, pulling me back into the bridal car. The bells. The road. "Yes?" "Tell me you trust me." I smiled. "With my whole heart." There was a pause. At the time I thought he was overwhelmed. Later, I would understand he was making sure the lie was complete. The bridal car turned onto the old stone road behind the cathedral. Tall cypress trees leaned over both sides, slicing the morning light into thin gold strips. The church was close enough now that I could hear the bells clearly, one after another, each sound like a step toward the life I had prayed for. Then the first black SUV appeared at the end of the road. It did not speed. It did not screech. It simply turned sideways across the street and stopped, blocking the way to the cathedral as if the city itself had decided my wedding would go no farther. My driver's hands tightened on the wheel. "What is that?" I asked. He did not answer. Another SUV stopped behind us. Then another. My heart began beating so hard that the pearls on my bodice seemed to move with it. "Adrian?" I whispered into the phone. For 1 second, there was only silence. Then his voice came back sharp and breathless. "Elena, what's happening?" A man stepped out of the first SUV. Black suit. Black gloves. No mask. That was how I knew he was not afraid of being recognized. 2 more men moved behind him, calm and precise, like this was not a crime but an appointment. The man in black walked to my door and opened it. Cold air rushed under my veil. "Miss Vale," he said politely. "Luca Moretti is waiting." My blood turned cold. Every bride in our city knew that name. Luca Moretti. the bride collector. Women whispered about him in dressing rooms, behind church doors, at engagement dinners after too much champagne. They said he did not steal wives. Wives were already claimed, already ordinary, already touched by disappointment. Luca Moretti wanted brides. Girls in white, girls still carrying flowers, girls on their way to promise forever. People said if his men came before the vows, the wedding never finished, and the bride never returned the same. No, I breathed. The man reached into the car and closed his hand around my wrist. I pulled back so hard my bouquet fell from my lap. My fiancé is behind us, I said, my voice shaking. He will stop you. The man's face did not change. That is what he is supposed to do. I did not understand those words. Not then. Behind us, tires screamed. Adrian's silver car stopped hard and his door flew open. Elena! Relief hit me so violently I almost sobbed. He came. He saw them. He would fight. He would save me. Adrian ran toward the car, his tie loose, his face pale with panic. Get away from her! He shouted. The nearest guard grabbed him before he reached me. Adrian swung at him. The guard struck him across the mouth, and Adrian fell against the side of his car with a sickening crack. Blood appeared at his lip, bright red, real enough to break my heart. Adrian! I screamed. Cars were stopping behind us now. Guests from the wedding convoy, my aunt, Adrian's cousin, one of the cathedral assistants, my mother's car somewhere behind them, her cry cutting through the morning louder than the bells. Everyone saw the same thing. A desperate groom bleeding in the road, a terrified bride being dragged from her car, black-suited men taking her in the name of Luca Moretti. And because the city already believed Luca was a monster, no one looked for another one. I fought harder. The man in black pulled me from the car and my heel caught on the edge of my dress. White silk tore with a soft, horrible sound. It was not loud, just final. My bouquet hit the ground. White roses scattered across the asphalt, crushed beneath a guard's polished shoe. Adrian crawled toward me. His hand reached out. Elena, hold on, he cried. I swear I'll get you back. I believed him so completely that I stopped fighting for myself and started fighting for him. Because that was what Adrian had trained me to do. Trust his voice, follow his road, cry his name. The guard lifted me off the ground, and my veil snapped backward, choking me for half a second before the lace tore loose from my hair. I reached for Adrian with both hands. Our fingers touched, just once. His hand closed around mine, then slipped away. I thought Luca's men had pulled us apart. I would not learn until much later that Adrian had let go first. Elena! He screamed as they forced me into the SUV. I love you. The whole road heard him. By sunset, the whole city would hear it too. Poor Adrian Cross, they would say. The groom who fought for his bride. The man who bled for the woman Luca Moretti stole. The man who lost the love of his life to the bride collector. That was the story Adrian gave them. That was the story Adrian gave me. For a while, I carried that lie like a wound. I hated Luca Moretti before I ever saw his face. I hated his name, his men, the black leather seat under me, the tinted windows that swallowed the cathedral behind us. I hated the way my torn veil lay on the floor at my feet, like proof that something sacred had been dragged through the dirt. One of the guards sat across from me, expressionless. My hands shook so violently I could barely keep the dress gathered over my knees. Where are you taking me? I asked. No one answered. My fiancé will pay whatever he wants. Still nothing. I leaned forward, my voice breaking. Did Luca Moretti tell you to take me because I was a bride? The guard looked at me then, not with pity, not with cruelty, but with a kind of tired certainty. Mr. Moretti does not need to be told what men are willing to lose. The sentence made no sense to me, and because it made no sense, I clung harder to the only story I understood. Adrian loved me. Adrian had fought. Adrian was bleeding on the road. Adrian would come. The SUV turned through iron gates an hour later and entered a mansion so large it seemed less built than declared. Black marble steps rose toward carved doors. Guards stood under tall columns. The walls were pale stone, the windows high and cold, the gardens perfect in a way that felt untouched by weather or mercy. I had repaired dresses for rich brides before. I had seen mansions. I had seen chandeliers, carved staircases, gold-trimmed dining rooms, champagne towers, and rooms where no one ever laughed too loudly. But Luca Moretti's estate did not look rich. It looked powerful, the kind of place money bought only after blood had already paid the deposit. The guards led me inside. My heels clicked against black marble. I tried not to limp where my dress had torn. The house smelled faintly of cedar, wax, and roses that had been cut too early. No one touched me roughly now. That almost made it worse. I was not dragged like a victim. I was escorted like a possession. They brought me to a set of double doors at the end of a long corridor. One guard opened them. "Wait here." I stepped inside and the breath left my body. The room was enormous, taller than a chapel, lit by narrow windows and a chandelier made of crystal drops that looked like frozen tears. Along the walls stood glass cases. Inside them were veils, white veils, ivory veils, lace veils, cathedral-length veils folded like sleeping ghosts. Beside them were bouquets dried and preserved under glass, broken rings, wedding portraits with the groom's face cut out or burned away, shoes, gloves, prayer books, hairpins, garters, small torn pieces of silk. A bridal gallery, a museum of stolen weddings. I walked toward the nearest case as if the room had pulled me by the throat. A veil rested inside, embroidered with tiny pearls. Beneath it was a silver nameplate, Isabella Romano, June 3rd. Another, Maeve Callahan, September 18th. Another, Sophia Bellini, December 9th. My stomach twisted. "How many brides did he take?" I whispered. "Enough to stop counting," a voice said behind me. I turned. Luca Moretti stood in the doorway. He was taller than I expected, dressed in a black suit cut so precisely it looked almost severe. His hair was dark, his beard trimmed, his face beautiful in the cruel way old statues are beautiful, all edges and silence, but it was his eyes that made the room colder. Not empty, worse, controlled, like he had burned every soft thing inside himself and kept the ashes in perfect order. I stepped back. He walked in slowly, and the guards outside closed the doors. "Elena Vale," he said. My name in his mouth did not sound like a greeting. It sounded like an item being identified. "Where is Adrian?" I asked. "Bleeding on a road for an audience. He fought for me." Luca's mouth barely moved. "Some men fight, some rehearse." "You're lying." "No," he said. "I am many things. A liar is not one of them." My hands curled into fists. "You kidnapped me on my wedding day." "Yes." The honesty hit harder than denial would have. "You collect brides," I said, my voice trembling with disgust. "Like dead flowers." His gaze moved briefly over the glass cases. "I collect proof that love is the most expensive lie men sell." "You're a monster." "Good," he said. "Monsters at least tell the truth." I hated him so much in that moment that the hatred steadied me. "Adrian loves me." Luca looked back at me, and for the first time, something almost like pity touched his face. I hated that more. "Every bride comes here believing she was loved," he said. "You will learn faster than most." I slapped him. The sound cracked through the bridal gallery. My palm burned. Luca's face turned slightly from the force, but he did not move otherwise. The room became so silent I could hear my own breath. Slowly he looked back at me. "That," he said quietly, "was brave." I lifted my chin though fear crawled up my spine. "No, that was deserved." Something flickered in his eyes. Not amusement, not anger, interest. "Perhaps." He turned and walked toward one of the cases. "Your veil will go there." He pointed to an empty glass case near the end of the room. "No," I said. "Every bride leaves something here." "Then take my fear," I snapped. "It is the only thing you managed to steal." His gaze sharpened. I had expected rage. Instead, Luca studied me as if I had spoken in a language he had almost forgotten. "Keep it," he said. "You may need it tonight." I did not sleep that night. They gave me a room larger than my entire apartment, with white curtains, a carved bed, and a lock on the outside. I sat on the floor in my torn wedding dress until my legs went numb. I waited for Adrian to come. I waited for the police. I waited for someone to burst in and say there had been a mistake. No one came. Near dawn, a maid entered with tea and a folded robe. She was older, her hair silver at the temples, her eyes careful. "You should change," she said. "Mr. Moretti does not like brides remaining in the dress after the first night." I stared at her. "After the first night?" She lowered her eyes. "I only meant you will be more comfortable." "How many have you seen?" I asked. She did not answer. That was answer enough. I changed only because I could not bear the torn silk touching my skin anymore. The maid tried to take the dress, but I grabbed it from her. "No," she hesitated. "Mr. Moretti keeps the wedding items." "Then tell Mr. Moretti he can come take it from my hands." She looked frightened enough that guilt pricked me, but I did not let go. A few minutes later, Luca came himself. He stood in the doorway without entering. His eyes fell to the dress clutched against my chest. "You are difficult," he said. "You are a criminal. Both can be true. You are not taking this dress." "Why?" "Because it is mine." His expression darkened. "It became mine when your groom traded the road." "He did not trade anything." Luca was silent for a moment. Then he said, "Adrian Cross owes me a debt." "Then take his money." "He has none that I cannot already take." "Then take his house, his cars, his pride, his blood." "Why me?" Luca stepped closer but still did not cross fully into the room. "Because in my world, when a man betrays Moretti blood, he pays with the thing he is about to swear is sacred." My stomach turned. His bride. Yes. That is disgusting. Yes. Again, that terrible honesty. No excuse, no apology. "Then you admit you're a monster." I never denied it. I stood, still holding the dress. "Why would Adrian owe you?" Luca looked at me for a long time. "Ask yourself why a man in debt to a monster suddenly proposes to a woman who repairs veils in a church basement." The words hit me like a hand. "No." "Ask yourself why he chose the old stone road." "Stop." "Ask yourself why his driver did not run." "Stop it." "Ask yourself why he bled exactly enough to be seen." I threw the teacup at him. It shattered against the wall near his shoulder. Luca did not flinch. "Get out," I whispered. "Gladly." He turned to leave. At the door he paused. "When you are ready to stop protecting the man who delivered you, I will show you what he signed." The door closed. I sank to the floor. I did not believe Luca. I refused to. Because if Luca was telling the truth, then every soft thing Adrian had ever said to me became a weapon, and I was not ready to admit I had kissed the blade. I thought of the first week Adrian came to St. Michael's every morning with coffee. He never brought roses then. He brought little things that made him feel safe. Honey for my mother's throat. A book about antique lace because I had mentioned once that old patterns had stories in them. A pair of thin gloves because he said my hands should not always bleed for other people's weddings. He asked about my mother's medicine schedule and remembered the answer. He sat on the church steps while I repaired dresses and told me that the rich girls he knew all wanted to be seen, but I made people feel seen. I had laughed because I did not know what to do with praise. He noticed. He always noticed. "You are not used to being chosen," he said one evening, while we stood under the cathedral archway, watching rain turn the street silver. "That is why you look surprised every time someone is kind to you." I remember looking down at my hands because my eyes had filled too quickly. Maybe kindness just feels expensive. He touched my fingers gently. "Not with me." That was the lie that ruined me. He did not trap me with diamonds. He trapped me with attention. He did not tell me I was beautiful first. He told me I mattered. And because I had waited so long to matter to someone, I forgot to ask why a man like Adrian Cross had suddenly needed me so much. The next day in Luca's mansion, I found the first crack. A guard escorted me back to the bridal gallery because Luca wanted me to see where lies became permanent. I went because refusing had become exhausting. I walked past case after case, reading names I did not want to remember. At the far end of the gallery was an old veil unlike the others. It was not displayed beautifully. It was folded in a shadowed case, yellowed at the edges, torn along one side in an irregular line. I stopped without meaning to. My hands lifted toward the glass. "This one is different," I said. Luca, standing behind me, said nothing. "The tear is not from an attack." I leaned closer. The lace stretched inward here. Someone pulled it open carefully first, then ripped it wider to make the damage look accidental. Luca's silence changed texture. I felt it before I looked at him. "Why do you say that?" He asked. "Because I repair veils. I know what panic damage looks like. This is not panic. Someone hid something inside the seam." His face became unreadable, but something in his eyes went very still. Do not touch that case. I did not. Do not speak of it again. Whose was it? No one you need to know. That means someone you cannot forget. Luca stepped close enough that I had to tilt my head back. Curiosity is not courage, Elena. I held his gaze, though my heart was pounding. And control is not strength. For a second, I thought he might punish me. Instead, he looked at me the way he had looked after I slapped him, as if I had interrupted a belief he had spent years polishing. You see too much, he said. Maybe you hide too badly. His jaw tightened. Then he turned away. That was the first time I realized Luca Moretti was not empty. Something was buried inside him. Something old. Something still bleeding. But that did not make him less dangerous. It made him worse. A monster with a wound is still a monster. He simply knows where to put the knife. On the third day, Luca showed me Adrian's first proof. He did not ask whether I was ready. He placed a folder on the long black table in his study and opened it with 2 fingers. Inside was a copy of my wedding route, printed on Adrian's private stationery, marked in red. Old Stone Road, 10:17 a.m., bridal car separated by 2 vehicles. Driver confirmed. I stared at it until the lines blurred. Anyone could have made this. Luca placed another paper beside it. A bank transfer. The driver's name. Adrian's holding company. No. Another paper. Security schedule. Guards removed from the old road for 12 minutes. Adrian's signature on the change request. No. Luca did not comfort me. He did not soften his voice. He simply kept placing truth after truth on the table until denial had nowhere left to stand. Stop, I said finally. He stopped. That surprised me. I need air. He nodded once. The doors to the terrace are open. You are letting me walk out? The terrace has guards. Of course it does. But yes, he said. You may walk. How generous of the man who stole me. His face did not change. Adrian sold you. I took you. I will not make my sin prettier because his was uglier. I looked at him then. Really looked. Was that supposed to be an apology? No. Then what was it? A fact. I laughed once, broken and sharp. You are impossible. Usually. I turned away before he could see my tears. On the terrace, I gripped the stone railing and tried to breathe. The garden below was too perfect. All trimmed hedges and white roses, and I hated the roses most of all. I hated that they still looked beautiful after mine had been crushed on the road. That evening, Luca sent the final recording. He did not play it in front of the guards. He did not bring me to the gallery. He came to the room where I had refused dinner, placed a small recorder on the table, and said, "This is the last thing I will show you unless you ask for more." My hands went cold. What is it? The truth without paper. I don't want it. Then do not press play. He turned to leave. Wait, he stopped. If I listen, I said, barely breathing, will it kill whatever is left of me? His eyes darkened in a way that almost looked human. No, he said quietly, but it will kill what he built. When he left, I stared at the recorder for an hour. Then I pressed play. Adrian's voice filled the room. Calm, familiar, beloved. Clara cannot be touched. She is carrying my child. Luca wants a bride, not the woman I love. Elena believes every word I say. She will wear the dress, take the road, and cry my name like it is real. By sunset, everyone will blame the bride collector. The recorder slipped from my hand. The room tilted. I remember trying to stand and failing. I remember my knees hitting the floor. I remember making a sound that did not feel like it came from my body. He had not loved me. He had rehearsed me. Every coffee, every remembered detail, every soft look in the chapel, every time he said I was chosen. He had not been building a marriage. He had been building a believable loss. My wedding day had never been a wedding day to him. It had been delivery day. The door opened, but Luca did not come in. He stood at the threshold. Elena, I could not answer. I am outside, he said. If you want me, say my name. If you do not, no one will enter. Then he closed the door again, leaving it slightly open. I cried until my throat hurt. I cried for the woman in the bridal car. I cried for the girl in the church basement who thought being seen meant being loved. I cried for every version of myself Adrian had touched, only to measure how easily I could be moved. Hours later, when I finally crawled to the door, Luca was still there. sitting in a chair across the hall, jacket removed, sleeves rolled to his forearms, eyes open. He had waited, not like a captor, not like a hero, like a man who knew he had no right to enter but could not make himself walk away. "Why?" I whispered. He stood. "Why what? Why are you still here?" "Because the first night after truth is dangerous. For me, for anyone who has to survive it." I wiped my face with shaking hands. "You should be happy. You were right. Being right has never made grief quieter." I looked at him then, and I hated that his words did not sound like Adrian's. Adrian's words had always arrived dressed beautifully. Luca's arrived bruised, blunt, without perfume. "Did you know before you took me?" I asked. I knew Adrian had arranged the road. "Did you know he never loved me?" Luca's eyes lowered for half a second. "I suspected." The answer hurt more because it was honest. "And you still took me?" "Yes." "Why?" "Because I wanted his bride." The old hatred sparked through the grief. "There, the monster speaks." "Yes." He did not step away from it. I wanted to watch a man who betrayed me lose the thing he was about to swear was sacred. But it was not sacred to him. I was not sacred to him. I know that now. "No," I said, my voice rising. "You knew enough. You knew he gave you the road. You knew he was a coward. And still you let me be dragged in white silk like I was part of your punishment." Luca stood very still. "Yes." "Say more than yes." His jaw tightened, and for the first time I saw him struggle not with anger but with shame. "Adrian sold you, but I still took you. I made your pain useful to my pride. I made your dress part of my wound. I cannot hide my sin behind his." The hall seemed to narrow around us. "Are you apologizing?" I asked. "I am trying." "You do not sound like you know how." "I do not." The truth of that struck something in me. Luca Moretti, the bride collector, the monster of bridal whispers, looked at me as if apology were a language he had learned too late and badly, but still wanted to speak correctly. "Then try harder," I said. He swallowed. "I am sorry, Elena. Not because Adrian was worse. Not because I eventually gave you proof. Not because I did not touch you. I am sorry because before I knew your name, I made you part of something broken in me." My tears came again, quieter this time. For months of knowing Adrian, I had never heard him admit a wrong without decorating it. Luca's apology had no flowers around it. Maybe that was why it hurt in a cleaner way. The next morning, he gave me an envelope. Inside was cash, a new identity, an apartment address in another city, copies of the evidence against Adrian, and a phone with one number saved. Moretti. "What is this?" I asked. "A door." "You are letting me go?" "Yes." "Why?" "Because if I keep you now, I become exactly what you called me." I almost laughed. "You already are." "Perhaps," he said. "But there are lines even monsters notice after crossing them." I stared at the envelope. "And if I leave?" "You leave. No guards?" "None. No one following?" "One car at a distance for the first 2 days. Not to bring you back. To make sure Adrian does not find you before you decide what to do with the truth." I did not agree to that. "You do not have to. The car will disappear if you call that number and say so." I looked at him suspiciously. "You expect me to trust you?" "No, I expect you to test me." That was the difference between Luca and Adrian. Adrian had demanded trust and called it love. Luca offered proof and called it nothing. I left that afternoon. I wore a plain gray dress from the closet, carried the envelope in one hand, and did not look back when the Moretti gates opened. For 2 days, I stayed in the apartment Luca had arranged and tried to remember how to be a person without a veil, without a groom, without a story the city had already written for me. But the world outside the mansion was not the world I had left. News sites called me Luca Moretti's stolen bride. Adrian had demanded trust and called it love. Luca offered proof and called it nothing. I left that afternoon. I wore a plain gray dress from the closet, carried the envelope in one hand, and did not look back when the Moretti gates opened. For 2 days, I stayed in the apartment Luca had arranged and tried to remember how to be a person without a veil, without a groom, without a story the city had already written for me. But the world outside the mansion was not the world I had left. News sites called me Luca Moretti's stolen bride. Some said I had been ruined. Some said I had run away willingly. Adrian gave one public statement, his lips still bruised, eyes red, voice trembling. I will never stop loving Elena. Luca Moretti took my bride, but he will never take what she meant to me. People cried for him. Women sent flowers. Men praised his courage. My mother was harassed by reporters until she stopped answering the door. The cathedral received threats for hosting the wedding that never happened. And everywhere, Adrian's lie lived easier than my truth, because his had been performed in public, and mine had happened in rooms no one wanted to imagine. On the third night, I called the number. Luca answered on the first ring. Elena? He did not sound surprised. I want my story back, I said. There was a pause. Then come back for it. I am not coming back as your bride. No, he said. Come back as yourself. I returned to the Moretti mansion not because I loved Luca, not because I had forgiven him, and not because I had nowhere else to go. I returned because Adrian had stolen more than my wedding. He had stolen my voice, and the only person who had given me the truth without asking me to smile for it was the monster who had taken me. The second time I entered Luca's house, I walked through the front doors on my own feet. No white dress, no veil, no bouquet. The guards lowered their eyes as if something about that mattered. Luca waited in the entrance hall. You came back, he said. By choice. Yes. Do not make me regret it. A faint shadow crossed his mouth. I would not dare. It was almost humor. Almost. We began badly. That is the truth of it. I did not glide into healing. He did not become gentle overnight. Luca was still controlling, still cold, still capable of making men tremble with one quiet sentence. Some mornings I heard screams from the lower level and knew someone who had crossed Moretti blood was learning why the city feared him. Some nights he disappeared into meetings where mercy was not invited. I did not pretend not to see it. Once, after a man was dragged bleeding through the courtyard, I confronted him in the gallery. You cannot ask me to see the man inside the monster if you keep feeding the monster in front of me. Luca's eyes hardened. My world is not repaired with lace, Elena. No, but not every tear needs blood. Some do. And some need courage. He stepped close. Do not confuse softness with morality. Do not confuse violence with strength. He stared at me for a long moment, then walked away before either of us said something we could not take back. I spent days in the restoration room he ordered, built beside the gallery, after I complained that the veils were being preserved like bodies, instead of cared for like memories. You complain often, he said. You kidnap often. Not recently. Congratulations, he almost smiled. I noticed, he noticed that I noticed. Small things changed first. Luca stopped calling me the bride. The first time he said my name without warning, I nearly missed it. We were standing over Valeria's torn veil, the one he had forbidden me to discuss. I had asked permission to repair the seam, not because I wanted his approval, but because I had learned that this particular piece of lace was not simply evidence. It was the bone under his scar. Leave it ruined, he said. Why? Because it deserves to be. The veil did not betray you. His eyes flashed. The woman wearing it did. Then why punish the veil? He had no answer, so I continued. You keep broken things around you so you never have to admit they can be healed. You think you can heal me with thread? No, I said. I think you are afraid I can prove something survived. Luca stood behind me for a long time while I worked. Valeria's veil was old, the lace brittle, the tear ugly but precise. I found the hidden channel where something small had once been sewn inside. A transmitter, Luca told me finally, voice flat. Valeria Rossetti had been chosen for him when he was 26, a bride from a family that swore alliance. She was beautiful in the way paintings are beautiful, still, pale, perfect. On their wedding night, she wore that veil into the Moretti estate chapel, smiled at him under candlelight, and opened his house to his enemies. The transmitter inside the lace guided them through the private gate. By dawn, 3 Moretti men were dead. Luca's uncle had lost an eye, and Luca had killed his first bride with his own hands when he found her trying to flee through the east corridor. Her last words? I asked before I could stop myself. Luca looked at the veil, not at me. A bride is the easiest lie a man ever believes. The room went cold. So you believed her, I said. His gaze snapped to mine. I killed her. No, I said softly. You believed her. You let her decide what every bride after her meant. Anger moved across his face so quickly I stepped back. He saw it, stopped, closed his eyes. When he opened them, the anger had been chained again, but not erased. Careful, Elena. I am careful, I said. That is why I am telling you the truth instead of telling you what you want to hear. And what do I want to hear? That you are a monster because a bride made you one. His silence was answer enough. But that is not true, I said. Valeria gave you a wound. You built the gallery. He left without another word. That night I woke from a nightmare with Adrian's voice in my ear. Tell me you trust me. Tell me you trust me. Tell me you trust me. I stumbled out of bed, unable to breathe, and found Luca sitting in a chair outside my door. Do you sit there every night? I asked, embarrassed by how broken my voice sounded. No, liar. Sometimes. Why? He stood but did not come closer. Because trauma returns at night. And you know this because? His expression said enough. Why did you not come in? I asked. Because you did not invite me. The sentence was simple. It undid me. Adrian had entered every soft place inside me without permission, and called it intimacy. Luca, who had once taken my body from a road, now stood outside a door because I had not opened it. You can come in, I whispered. He did not move immediately. Are you sure? I nodded. He entered and stood near the window, far enough not to crowd me. I sat on the bed, wrapping my arms around myself. I hate that I still hear him. You loved the voice before you knew what carried it. That makes me feel stupid. It makes you human. I looked at him. Do you always answer pain like a verdict? I do not know how else to answer it. Try. Luca looked toward the window. You were not stupid, he said, slower now, as if each word had to be chosen by hand. You were lonely. He noticed. That is not your shame. It is his weapon. I cried then, quietly, and Luca did not touch me. He waited until I reached for his hand. Only then did he give it. His hand was warm, scarred across the knuckles, careful around mine. That was the first night I fell asleep with Luca Moretti in the chair beside my bed, his hand resting open where I could take it or leave it. Love did not arrive as a lightning strike. It arrived like small acts of restraint. A door left open, a name spoken gently, a truth given without decoration, a hand offered only after I reached. Luca learned me slowly, as if he feared learning meant wanting, and wanting meant weakness. I learned him slowly too, because trusting a monster is not romantic, unless the monster is willing to stop using the word as an excuse. Some days he failed. Once, after I overheard him ordering a debtor's fiancé to be brought to the estate as leverage, I walked into his study and said, "If you do that, I leave." The room went silent. His men stared at me as if I had stepped in front of a loaded gun. Luca looked up from his desk. This does not concern you. Every bride you turn into a lesson concerns me. She is not innocent. Then punish her crime, not her dress. His stare could have frozen fire. Leave us. His men obeyed instantly. When we were alone, he said, do not challenge me in front of my men. Then do not become smaller in front of them. That hit him. I saw it. You think mercy makes me small? No, I think you are terrified it will. He stood. You know nothing about the cost of mercy in my world. And you know nothing about the cost of being treated like a symbol instead of a person. We stood across from each other, breathing hard. Finally, Luca picked up the phone and changed the order. The woman was not brought in. He found another way to punish the man who owed him. He did not thank me. I did not expect him to. But that evening, when I entered the gallery, the empty case where my veil was supposed to go had been removed. In its place was a plain wooden table with sewing lamps, thread, and space to work. I touched the edge of it, understanding. Luca stood behind me. Do not look so pleased, he said. I am not pleased. You are. Maybe a little. He looked at the table, then at me. You make disobedience inconvenient. You make change dramatic. It feels dramatic. That is because you have not practiced. There it was again, almost a smile. I began repairing more than lace in that room. Not Luca, I could not repair a man, but I repaired the meaning of things around him. A veil was not always a trap. A ring was not always a shackle. A bride was not always a lie. Slowly, against his will and mine, Luca began to watch not the things I fixed, but the reason I fixed them. One afternoon, I found him holding my torn wedding dress. He had taken it from storage. The tear from the road still cut through the skirt. I stiffened. "Why do you have that?" I was going to burn it. My heart lurched. "No, I know." He looked at the tear. "That is why I did not." I stepped closer. "Why would you burn it?" "Because I hate what happened to you in it." "So do I." "Then why keep it?" I touched the torn silk. "Because it is evidence that I survived the day Adrian planned for me." Luca looked at me for a long time. "You turn wounds into testimony. You turn them into rooms. And you think yours is healthier?" "No," I said, "but mine leaves space for tomorrow." That night, he asked me to dinner without guards in the room. Not ordered, asked, "Would you join me?" I looked up from my sewing. "Did Luca Moretti just say would?" "Do not make me regret grammar." I joined him. Dinner was quiet at first. He did not know how to ask harmless questions, and I did not know how to sit across from him without remembering the road. But then he asked about my mother, not strategically, not like Adrian, who had gathered details to use later. Luca asked once and listened to the whole answer. I told him how my mother raised me alone after my father left, how she cleaned church offices at night, how she saved scraps of lace because she believed beautiful things should not be wasted, how I learned to sew from the women who could not afford new dresses but still wanted to feel honored on their wedding day. Luca said, "That is why you believe torn things deserve patience." I looked at him. "Yes." He nodded, as if filing the truth somewhere sacred. "Who taught you that broken things deserve display?" I asked. He did not answer for so long I thought he would not. Then he said, "No one. I taught myself after deciding healing was too close to forgetting. And now?" He looked at me across the candlelight. "Now I am less certain." That was how Luca loved before he knew it was love. In uncertainties, in pauses, in choices not to do harm when harm was easier. My feelings for him frightened me because they did not erase what he had done. He had taken me. He had made me part of his punishment. He had shown me the gallery like a threat, but he had also apologized without demanding forgiveness. He had freed me when he wanted to keep me close. He had waited outside my door. He had changed orders because I told him a bride was not a weapon. He had begun to say my name like it mattered. One evening, rain struck the tall windows of the gallery, and I stood beneath the repaired veil that had once belonged to Valeria. It no longer looked beautiful exactly. Some scars cannot be hidden without lying. I had mended the tear in a way that showed where it had been broken, silver thread holding old lace together. Luca entered quietly. "It looks different," he said. "It is different. You left the scar visible. Repair does not mean pretending damage never happened." He stepped closer. "You speak like that to torture me." "No, to reach you." He looked at me then, and something in his face shifted. The guardedness was still there, but behind it was exhaustion. Years of carrying a room full of dead vows. Years of calling grief power because power sounded less helpless. "Why?" he asked. "Why what?" "Why reach me?" The answer rose before I could make it safe. "Because I think someone should have reached you before you became this." The rain filled the silence. Luca's jaw moved once, like he had bitten down on words. "Do not pity me." "I do not." "Then what is this?" I took a breath. "I do not know yet." He looked almost angry at that, but not with me. With the thing growing between us. "I do," he said. My heart stopped. Luca stepped closer, slowly, always slowly now, as if he had trained himself to give me time to refuse him. "I know exactly what this is, and I hate that I know. Luca, I spent years believing love was the door through which ruin entered." His voice was low. "Then you walked into my house wearing the dress of a man who sold you, and somehow you became the first person who did not use my weakness against me." I could not speak. "I thought wanting someone gave them a knife and showed them where to place it," he continued. But you never reached for the knife. Maybe I did not want to hurt you. The words left me too softly. His eyes closed for 1 second. When he opened them, the monster was still there, but for the first time, he looked like a man standing in front of the cage he had built around himself, and realizing the door had never been locked from the outside. "I am sorry," he said. "For what?" "For stealing you. For making you part of my wound. For calling it punishment when it was pride. For letting you believe I was only a monster because it was easier than admitting I did not know how to be anything else." My eyes filled. "You frightened me. I know. You hurt me. I know. You made me hate you. I deserved that. And then you stood outside my door all night because I was afraid to sleep." His throat moved. "Yes. You gave me truth when lies would have been easier. Yes. You let me leave. Hardest thing I have done in years." The honesty broke something open in me. I stepped closer. I was afraid that maybe I trusted you only because Adrian was worse. Luca went still. And then I realized that Adrian gave me softness with a hook inside it. You gave me pain with a door out. Luca's breath changed. "Elena, I am not saying you are good. I know. I am saying I have seen good fight its way through you." His eyes darkened, not with anger, but with emotion so controlled it looked painful. "Do not say that unless you mean it." "I mean it." My voice trembled. I saw the real man inside the monster. The man who still remembers every name. The man who can destroy a room but waits outside a door because he was not invited in. The man who thinks he became unlovable, but still looks relieved when someone tells him he is not. Luca looked away, but not before I saw what my words had done. "I did not think I could love anyone," he said. "Not after Valeria, not after what I became. But you," he looked back at me, "you made me remember the man I buried because I thought he was too weak to survive." I was crying now. Not from Adrian's wound, from something new, something terrifying and alive. "I love you," Luca said. No charm decorated it, no performance. It sounded like surrender. "I love you in a way that terrifies me because for the first time in years I do not want to own what I love. I want to be worthy of standing beside it." I lifted my hand and placed it against his chest, right over his heart. It was beating hard. "I love you," I whispered. "Not because you saved me from Adrian. Not because you are safe. You are not safe, Luca, but you are real. And I have spent my life touching other women's love after someone else had worn it, thinking maybe that was all I would ever have. Adrian saw that loneliness and used it. You saw it and stopped making me ashamed of it." Luca bowed his head, and for one impossible second, the most feared man in the city looked breakable. "Marry me," he said. But then he stepped back quickly, as if the words themselves had frightened him. He reached into his coat and removed a ring, dark and old, a black diamond set in Moretti gold. He did not take my hand. He placed the ring on the table between us. "Not because you need protection," he said. "Not because you owe me forgiveness. Not because Adrian broke you. I am not asking a stolen bride to become my wife. I am asking Elena Vale, the woman who walked out of my house and came back by choice. Marry me only if, after everything true, you still want me." I looked at the ring, then at the repaired veil, then at the man who had finally stopped hiding behind the word monster. I picked up the ring and placed it in his palm. Luca froze. I held out my hand. "Then put it on me," I whispered. "Not as your trophy." His voice was rough. "As what? As the woman who chooses you?" His fingers trembled as he slid the ring onto mine. I had once worn Adrian's ring and felt chosen by a lie. Luca's ring felt heavier. Not because it owned me, because it carried truth. We married 3 days later in the private chapel inside the Moretti estate. I did not wear the white dress from Adrian's road. I wore ivory silk with no veil. My hair was unpinned. My mother was there, pale and trembling, protected by Moretti guards, crying quietly because she had seen the evidence, heard the recording, and still struggled to understand how the man she had once blessed had built my kidnapping like a stage play. Luca stood at the altar in black. No guests from society, no cameras, no flowers arranged for spectacle. Just truth, a priest too afraid to stutter, my mother holding my hand before she gave it to me instead of to any man, and Luca waiting without reaching until I stepped forward. His vow was simple. I will be a monster to the world when the world requires it, but I will never be your cage. Mine was quieter. I did not come to save you. I came to live beside the man who chose truth after becoming fluent in darkness. When Luca kissed me, he did not kiss me like he had won. He kissed me like something had been entrusted to him, and he was terrified of failing it. After the wedding, the mansion changed in ways people pretended not to notice. The bridal gallery did not disappear. I would not let Luca erase history just because he was ashamed of it. But the room changed. Some cases were opened. Some items were returned. Some names were restored. My empty case became a table for repair work. Luca's men began bringing problems to me before they became punishments. Not always. The world did not turn gentle because I married a dangerous man. But sometimes, Luca paused before choosing the cruelest answer. Sometimes he asked what I saw. Sometimes he listened. And every time he did, the men around him learned a new kind of fear. Not that their boss had become weak, but that his wife could make him think. I became Mrs. Moretti first in whispers, then in lowered heads, then in the way doors opened before I touched them. Luca never called me queen. Other people did. I did not correct them. Months passed before I asked about Adrian. Not because I had forgotten. I had not. Betrayal does not vanish because love grows around it. Sometimes happiness makes the old wound louder because you finally have enough peace to hear how badly you were hurt. One night, after dinner, I found Luca in his study and placed Adrian's old ring on his desk. I had kept it in a box, not because I wanted it, but because I needed to remember the shape of the lie. Luca looked at the ring, then at me. "What do you want done with him?" he asked. "I do not want him dead." "That is unfortunate. For you or for him?" "Both." I almost smiled, but the feeling passed quickly. "I want him to see me." Luca leaned back slowly. "He has seen you." "No. He saw the lonely girl he could train into a bride. He saw the woman screaming his name on the road. He has not seen what became of the bride he delivered." Luca's eyes sharpened. "You want public truth." "I want his lie to die where he made it powerful." Luca understood before I said more. "At an altar," I nodded. "Find him." Luca found him in less than a day. Adrian Cross, tragic groom, public victim, beloved survivor of Luca Moretti's cruelty, was getting married on Saturday to Clara Whitmore. Clara, the woman in the recording. Clara carrying his child. Clara, the woman he had called his future while arranging mine like a sacrifice. When Luca handed me the file, I opened it calmly. Too calmly. There was the church, the guest list, the press note. Adrian had rebuilt himself beautifully. Sympathy had polished him. People admired how he had found the courage to love again. Clara's family had accepted him as a wounded man who deserved happiness after tragedy. The tragedy was me. He had made my disappearance his qualification for a better life. I closed the file. "Then we should not be late," I said. Luca watched me carefully. "Elena, no. I have not said anything. You are about to ask if I am sure. Are you?" I looked at the black diamond on my finger. He turned my wedding into a delivery. I will turn his wedding into a confession. On Saturday, the cathedral was full before noon. Rich guests filled the pews. White flowers climbed the pillars. Cameras waited outside. Adrian stood at the altar in a black tuxedo, handsome and pale in the holy light, the perfect image of a man who had suffered and survived. Clara stood beside him in a dress that looked more expensive than my entire old life, one hand resting often against her stomach. She was beautiful, nervous, not innocent, but not prepared for the truth either. The priest began. Luca and I waited outside the great doors until the moment came. If anyone knows why this marriage should not take place. The doors opened. Silence moved through the church before we did. Luca entered first, black suit, controlled face, power walking beside him like a shadow. Every guest froze. Mothers grabbed daughters' hands. Men lowered their eyes. The bride collector had entered a wedding. Then I stepped in beside him. Not in white. Never again in white for another man's lie. I wore black silk, elegant and simple, with the Moretti ring on my hand and no veil over my face. I wanted Adrian to see my eyes clearly when his world ended. The sound that left him was not a word. His face drained of color so completely that for 1 second I thought he might fall. Clara turned, confused. The guests began whispering. Someone said my name like a prayer. Someone else said, "It's Elena Vale." Adrian gripped the altar rail. "Elena?" Luca's voice carried through the cathedral, calm and lethal. "Mrs. Moretti." The whispering became a wave. Adrian tried to recover. He stepped forward with tears already forming because performance was the only language he truly knew. "Elena," he breathed. "Thank God. What has he done to you?" I looked at him and felt nothing soft. That surprised me. I had expected rage to burn. Instead, I felt clean. "No, Adrian," I said. "Today we talk about what you did to me." His eyes flicked toward the guests. He was calculating exits, witnesses, angles. I recognized it now. "You are confused," he said gently, using the voice that had once made me feel safe. "He took you. He brainwashed you. Everyone knows what Luca Moretti does to brides." I smiled a little. "Yes, you counted on that." Clara's hand tightened over her stomach. "Adrian?" He ignored her. "Elena, please. Come with me. I can still protect you." Luca moved slightly, but I touched his arm. He stopped. That small obedience did more damage to Adrian than any threat could have. The whole cathedral saw Luca Moretti, the monster, pause because his wife asked him to. I lifted a small recorder. Adrian's face changed. "Just a flicker, but enough. You told the city Luca stole me," I said. "You told them you fought. You told them you lost the love of your life." "I did," he snapped, panic cracking the gentle mask. "I lost you." "No," I said. "You delivered me." I pressed play. His own voice filled the cathedral. "Clara cannot be touched. She is carrying my child. Luca wants a bride, not the woman I love. Elena believes every word I say. She will wear the dress, take the road, and cry my name like it is real. By sunset, everyone will blame the bride collector." Clara stumbled back as if the recording had struck her. The church erupted. Adrian shouted, "That is fake!" Luca's men began handing documents to the front pews. Route map, driver payment, security change, blood packet purchase, signed instructions. Adrian's father stood with shaking hands. My mother, seated near the back under protection, covered her mouth and wept silently. Clara stared at Adrian with horror spreading across her face. "You said she would be safe," she whispered. The church quieted around that sentence. I turned to Clara. "So you knew there was a she?" Clara's lips trembled. "He told me it was not real. He said he was only using the engagement to distract Moretti. He said no one would be hurt." Pain crossed her face, and guilt with it. Good. Let guilt breathe. I walked toward her slowly. Adrian reached as if to stop me, but Luca's gaze pinned him in place. I stopped before Clara. "You knew he was lying to another woman." She lowered her eyes. "Yes. You let him." Tears spilled down her cheeks. "I loved him. So did I said. "That is what men like Adrian count on." She looked at me then, and I saw the moment she understood that love had not made her special. It had made her useful. "I am not here to forgive you," I said quietly. "And I am not here to save you like you were innocent. I am here to show you the truth I did not get before I wore the dress." Clara's hand moved again to her stomach. Her engagement ring shook on her finger. "If he could sell me to protect you," I said, "one day he will sell you to protect himself." Clara removed the ring. Adrian's face twisted. "Clara, don't listen to her." Clara threw the ring at his feet. "Do not say my name." That was when Adrian lost everything. Not when the recording played. Not when the guests gasped. When the woman he had sacrificed me for looked at him as if he had become something unclean. Adrian turned to Luca then, desperation making him stupid. "You did this," he spat. "You took her from me." Luca stepped forward, and the church seemed to shrink around him. "No," he said. "You gave her to me." Adrian's mouth opened, but no sound came. Luca's voice dropped. "That was your first mistake." I looked at Adrian, the man who had once made me feel chosen because he needed me obedient. "And your second," I said. "I was believing a monster could only make me disappear." The cameras outside caught everything when Adrian stumbled from the altar and found the doors blocked by reporters, who had already received the evidence. His story died before sunset. By nightfall, the city no longer mourned Adrian Cross, the groom who lost his bride. They cursed Adrian Cross, the man who sold her. Luca wanted to kill him. He did not say it dramatically. He simply asked later in the car, "Are you certain you want him breathing?" I looked out at the city lights. Death would make him a tragedy again. Luca considered that. You prefer shame. I prefer accuracy. His hand found mine in the darkness, not taking, just waiting. I laced my fingers through his. Let him live with the name he earned. Luca kissed my knuckles. As my wife commands, I looked at him. Careful, Moretti. People will think you are soft. Only people who have never seen you angry. When we returned to the mansion, I went straight to the bridal gallery. Luca followed. The room was dark, except for the moonlight spilling over glass cases, veils, old flowers, broken rings, the remains of vows that had once been used as proof that love was foolish. I stood in the center of it and remembered the first night I had entered, terrified and furious, certain I would become another dead thing under glass. Luca stood beside me. You were supposed to be my last trophy, he said. I looked at the empty space where my case had once waited. Then make me your first truth. He was quiet for a long moment. Then he walked to Valeria's repaired veil, opened the case, and removed the nameplate. Not the veil, not the memory, just the sentence that had kept him trapped. He looked at me. I do not know how to be less of what I was. Then start by not worshipping the wound. The next day, the bridal gallery changed again. Not erased, transformed. The cases remained, but the plaques changed. No longer dates of stolen weddings, names, truths, choices. Some items were returned. Some stayed because their owners wanted them remembered. My torn wedding dress was placed not behind glass, but on a dress form in the restoration room, the tear mended with visible silver thread. Beneath it, I wrote one line myself. This was not where my story ended. People still called Luca Moretti a monster. They were not entirely wrong. He remained dangerous. He remained feared. He remained a man who could silence a room without raising his voice. But with me, he learned to open his hand. With me, he learned that love did not have to be a trapdoor. With me, he learned a bride could enter his house and not become a lie. And I learned something too. I learned that innocence is not stupidity. Loneliness is not shame. Trusting the wrong man does not make you weak. It means someone studied your hunger and fed it poison. Adrian had looked at me and seen a girl he could train into a sacrifice. Luca had looked at me and first seen a trophy, then a wound, then a woman, then the truth he had spent years avoiding. Adrian gave me a ring so the world would believe he had lost me. Luca gave me one only after I had already walked away and chosen to come back. Adrian taught me how cruel fake love could be. Luca taught me how terrifying real love was when it came from a man who had forgotten he still had a heart. The day my fiancé delivered me to the monster, he thought he was ending my life in white silk and church bells. He thought Luca Moretti would collect me, break me, frame me, and make me vanish into the same whispers that had swallowed every bride before me. But Adrian forgot one thing. Monsters can change when the right woman refuses to become their proof. Luca Moretti was a monster when I met him. I will never lie about that. But I was not his collection. I was not his trophy. I was the bride who walked into his darkness, repaired the veil he had built his hatred around, and made him remember the man buried beneath the monster. Adrian delivered me to the bride collector. He never imagined I would return as Mrs. Moretti. He never imagined the lonely girl he trained to cry his name would one day walk into his wedding on another man's arm, wearing a black diamond ring and the kind of love he could never fake. He never imagined the monster would make me his wife. He never imagined I would become his queen.